know what the delay is at the start, but there is something there. OBS sort of gives you cryptic hints that things are moving or not. Anyway, it looks like things are moving, and we're on episode, where are we? 19 of Space Thing. And this week, today, I think we're going to look at some gameplay, because, confession time, I didn't realise it was a national holiday in my country yesterday, and woke up rather unexpectedly with some time on my hands, and I spent some time sort of refactoring Space Thing, so we'll have a quick glance at some of those things too, and I think we'll get stuck in. So who we got? I know we've got Magetsub, we've got Christoph, Danderstein is here, Morris is here, Apostolisk is here. Excellent, good. The regular crew are all here. Now, I will say that my throat might give out a little bit today. So do apologise if it starts to get a bit croaky. But I've basically been talking all day. And we'll see how it goes. Yes, Danny isn't here. Alter's here, though. That's good. Yeah, I woke up and Mrs. Javid X9 was sort of laughing at me, going, "What are you doing? Why? Where are you going? What's going on?" Because usually when I have any kind of free time, I have a list of things to do, which has been thoughtfully provided for me. Dursage, hello. Nullbiter, hello. Oskidan, hello. Dragoneyes here as well. Megarev is here. And, have we had any... saying hello to Speedy. Is Speedy here? Have I missed out Speedy? I don't think Speedy's here, but yes, let's say hello to Speedy anyway. RHK, hello. Right, so yes, some things to talk about. So one of the things to talk about first is actually, you can go and try the latest demonstration in the browser. It takes a little while to load, and I guess with sort of 4 or 5 people all clicking it at once, it might just take a bit more time. Null Alternative, yes, CodeZoners, that's what we should be called. Julian Nichols, hello. Yes, Speedy will see this in the VOD, so yes, good stuff, Morris, I like that. And Alex is here, very nice. Good. So, finding some time to myself, I actually did something I've not done for a long time this year. I spent the day coding, which was really refreshing. I haven't spent a full day coding since about January this year. Always had things to do. As you may have noticed, the YouTube channel has pretty much stopped at the moment for things that are going on in my life, but those things are, well, they're going to be happening pretty soon. And we're all set, by the way. I know some people do care about these things, but we're actually set for clothes, and we've got the nursery set up, and we've got like hundreds of nappies or diapers, we've got bottles, we've got food, we've got toys, we've got absolutely everything. So we're all set. We're just we're missing the star of the show at the moment. Danny Cron made it in the end. Who have we got here? Asenv, hello. Claw767, Claw Z76, hello. Hermes, hello, yes, good. The cloning chamber's doing just fine. It's decided to stop going to work this week, so I think it's imminent. Do you think we are living in a simulation? Well, I know for a fact that you're living in a simulation. I'm not. Ethriel Espion, hello. Excellent. Right, good. We've said enough hellos. We'll get started, I think. So, some of the changes I made, and I'll just boot up the demo, show you where it's got up to. Oh, hang on, it's building. Does that mean it's not going to work? What did I change and didn't test? We'll find out. Well, it is building. That's good. Excellent. So what I changed, you'll see it doesn't really look very different, but I've sort of refined quite a few things. The first thing I changed was actually the entire project structure. So I've now broken things out into files, and we'll look through that. I'm only going to sort of briefly go through them, because I think we're at that stage now where we've got some core mechanics down. It's time to start thinking about the gameplay, and that's what I wanted to maybe experiment with a little bit today. But you can now use it tells you in the bottom corner what you can do in the demo, but you can use the middle mouse button to sort of pan, and you can use the left mouse button to select things, and you'll see the camera does a nice little zip. And if you click away, it deselects. You can also press escape to deselect too. And you can see the state machine state in the top corner. If I just put the sun there, you can actually see the state change as we do things. Oh, hang on, what's going on? Caltinril just subscribed. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Yes, very good. Excellent. And now if you've got something selected and you press S, that means do something. So here we can see I've selected the planet, and we talked about this in the previous episode. I can now place an object, but rather than placing another object, we can now place satellites or space stations. And they become selectables just like the planet. Now they go very quickly at the moment, but that's okay. So I'm going to put a couple of space stations in. Now, if you've got a space station selected, you can zoom in. You'll notice the camera follows the object that you've got zoomed. You can't pan, so that's one of our camera states. But if you've got a satellite selected and you press S again, you now enter satellite editing mode. Now this is a very interesting mode regarding the cameras, because now the camera is pannable and zoomable relative to the satellite, but the rest of the universe and the simulation is carrying on moving around, which I think is quite nice, because you want this to be static whilst you're editing it, and it uses exactly the same edit tools that we made last time. So you can press up to select the part, right click to rotate it around, and we can only place it in valid locations. So let's build a quick satellite here. So if I choose something like a solar panel piece, there we go, and pop those. And now at the moment these were just to test the theory in many ways. There's nothing functional going on here, but that's what we might want to start thinking about tonight. Once you've finished editing the satellite, you can just press escape, and it becomes the selected object again. The camera is still a little bit, it's a bit shaky. You can see it will settle down after a while, so we might want to adjust that at some point. But it's okay. So it's kind of settled down now. And then you can click away to deselect, and of course once you've deselected, the camera is under your control again. So it's all become sort of a very fluid way of interacting with the world. We can start placing things of interest. Right, hang on, let's have a quick look at the chat. What's it? Apostolisk. Yeah, I think we might need a bit more than that. Apparently you're only subbed on YouTube. Oh, that's okay. The Magical Raid. Okay. We've been raided, have we? Magic. From Code Spells. Code Spells, well, thank you very much. What you're all working on? We're working on Space Thing. So Space Thing is an ongoing project where we have no plan, but the idea is to develop some sort of sim city in space. I guess a little bit like Anno, because I want to look at the production chains and the logic around it. But we're also sort of exploring a new way of doing things, particularly for the One Lone Coder channel, and at the same time going to be, letting the community develop bits of it as well. So we're looking at how we can make it modifiable. So I'm just building this core engine, and then we're sort of going to unleash it onto the Discord community. And it will be very fun when we have all 12,000 members simultaneously submitting things. I'm sure we'll be able to manage that out. Or at least I'll nominate a moderator to just sort of stay in charge of all of that. Looking at you, Morris. So yes, a raid, okay. I think that's the first time we've been raided, hasn't it? Oh, Speedy's here. Hello, Speedy. Yes. Very good. Oh, well, thank you to all of the new people that are joining us right now. That's good. So if you've not seen my Twitch channel before, but you might actually be a bit familiar with maybe some of my YouTube videos, they do get around these days, then you'll realise this is totally chaotic. It's nothing like the YouTube channel at all. It's unplanned, unscripted, and we make a lot of it go as we make a lot of it up as we go along. But we do quite a bit of code, and we make lots of mistakes too. I'm very good at typos on live streams. So yes, there we go. We've got a planet, and we can place as many satellites as we want around the planet. And the satellites are running particularly fast at the moment because I'm just sort of experimenting with making sure the selection works and the camera works. I don't think in the game we'll have things sort of whizzing about this quickly. But there's things to start thinking about, and it's like the gameplay stuff which I'm interested in. So if I go back to our satellite here with the solar panel, so we've got this wobbliness. We'll sort that out. I think I know what's causing that, but maybe I'll fix that one off stream. We've got solar panels on here, and well, I guess the amount of power that they're generating at any one time is related to the distance of that satellite to this gigantic ball of fusion in the middle of our solar system. And I quite like that as a gameplay mechanic, that the production things, the processes, the factories, the harvesting stuff, the mines, the consumers, all of that, they're all moving around. So if you take a game like the Anno franchise, which I love dearly, everything's very static. Once you've put something there, it never moves around. And that really means you can sort of set up your production chains and really fine-tune them. And I think the dynamic of having your production logistic chain sort of dynamic all the time is either going to be really difficult to master or very frustrating, or it's quite an interesting dynamic. So I like the idea of having sort of the journey times differ, because all the planets will be rotating at their own speeds and their own satellites will be distance away, and there's other things to consider. So I don't want to forget about cost of getting from A to B. So if I want to get a resource from this satellite and I want to get it to some other satellite or some other planet in our solar system, that's obviously got to be transported. So the ship's got to go and do that. It's going to take time depending on the quality of the ship and how much can it carry and the cargo capacity, that sort of thing. But also the physical placement. So there will be natural cycles where it's advantageous to be doing transference of resources. And then there'll be situations where it's really a bad idea because your planets or your two locations are on opposite sides of the solar system from each other. Where is the promised hot tub? Well, it wasn't not enough Patreons, I'm going to say, to get the get the old hot tub out, I think. Right, let me catch up with some of the chats here. Are you using WX widgets for GUI? No, this is a technology of my own called Pixel Game Engine. I've used it quite a bit on the YouTube channel, and I will be doing all of the GUI inside this framework. So this is also it's a vehicle for me to sort of develop new bits of the Pixel Game Engine. One of those things is a complete GUI framework. It's not far off being completed, so we'll see that in a few weeks, hopefully. Do you find it plausible to have it approach somewhat similar level of complexity in terms of logistics as something like OTTD? I really don't know. We will see. The limiting factor for all of these things is basically it's a one-man band, but people have to create graphics and assets and things, and that's where it starts to fall apart, really. All community projects tend to hit a brick wall at that point. So will it be as complex as that? Probably not. I want to try and keep it fun. I want to make sure that the games don't take 100 hours in order to complete one simulation, and I want to have some silly things going on in there too. I'm also not entirely ruled out the concept of multiplayer, because I quite like the idea of later this year maybe using this as a bit of an AI sort of vehicle. We'll see. We'll see about that. It's all up in the air at the moment. We were working on documentation for a game where you program spells. Now that's an interesting, I think, because I think if you're going to do sort of an RPG-like thing, I've often wondered what is the merit of using sort of basic elements and then letting your game engine sort of combine these basic elements to yield some result. Is it too contrived to sort of manually fix things? I mean, you can have lots of basic elements, not just sort of the basic four. We can have like some 20-odd elements, but how they mix and match and interact with each other actually yields the end result. And I think that's quite interesting for the player to sort of experiment with that. Although I really hate crafting in games, I should point out. When you said satellites, you thought I was placing moons. That's not a moon. I think there is a C# chat on the Discord channel. Well, you can certainly ask C# questions. Yeah, we have a C# chat on the Discord. Gonzus, you were mentioning last time how you wished you could nest C-style comments. It is true that you cannot do that, but you can surround. Yeah, we can use the hasher, the preprocessor to sort of block out big chunks of code. That assumes I'm writing comments, of course, right? That would be a bit professional. Can I use Pixel Game Engine to create an overlay? I mean, where the game window can be transparent? Not easily, because the transparency of your application window is actually really nothing to do with what's going on inside the window. It's to do with the operating system. Now, Windows does allow you to change the transparency of your windows. I don't know how you do it, but you can do it. You can right-click on it, and somewhere there's a properties thing where you can actually set the opacity of the window. If you can tap into that, then that's how you'd go about doing it. If you wanted to use Pixel Game Engine as like an overlay for things like a Twitch stream, and I have done that before. In fact, I do that for the Game Decider stuff. You can just simply chroma key. Just render a color that you're going to turn transparent and let OBS actually handle the compositing for you. Everybody's disappointed that there's no hot tub. When I suggested that there would be a hot tub, you all threw up. Yeah, I just can't win. Can't win. Right, so I'll show you some of the changes that I made because I know that we changed from object-oriented programming to an ECS-style system. We discussed some of the merits of that, and I think we've settled on the idea that I actually quite like the approach. But I have restructured the project. Now, for those following along at home, I'll just briefly sort of go through the structure because I think we're getting to the point where I might start putting this up on some way for people to view the code rather than always just having to follow it on the Twitch streams. You, for one, are glad there isn't a hot tub. It's good to see that the hot tub is so divisive. Right, so what changed? Well, the first thing, and you might not be able to see it on the stream, but the first thing is down the left-hand side here. As you'll notice, all the file names have now become sort of more descriptive of the contents, which is a good thing. And I guess we'll start with start, and all that does is construct the space thing Pixel Game Engine class with a known resolution. Now, I break these out because this is what my int main is. We may want to specify what these parameters are in an external file later on. So it allows us to easily have sort of command line arguments and that sort of thing to get this going. I've created sort of everything in this ST namespace, mainly because that's, makes me look like I know what I'm doing. It offers no utility at all at the moment other than making everything a little bit longer to type. So do keep that in mind. If we go to the main engine is here, ST engine main, and this is actually the Pixel Game Engine, and on the whole it's very similar to what we had previously, except now there's no code sort of in the header file, everything's broken out. We've got the three primary functions there, which are the Pixel Game Engine ones, and I've tried to, where I can, create functions that do things. So we know that we've been wanting to create planets as an entity, so this will go away and do that. It'll create the entity, and then it'll attach all of the components to it, and does its thing. As with create space station, in fact, you can see here, you don't need me to read them out, it's returning a type entity. I've added a new entity to the structure. And this entity is a tinted texture because we seem to have a lot of instances where we would have a decal associated with a pixel color when we're drawing it. So I thought that actually becomes an entity in its own right. And that simplified some of the loading of the assets. Then we've got variables which we've been using all the time, so these are things for drawing the stars. We've got various asset pools. Now, so I've split the assets so far into two categories. One is required assets, so that's going to be the game sort of GUI stuff, the overlays on the screen, intro sequences, that sort of thing. And then optional assets, I'm reserving for the space station modules, the planet textures, that sort of thing. These are going to be the stuff we're going to load from external locations. At the moment, we're still loading them as before. I'll show you these functions in a minute. So now we have our asset pools of different assets, so planets, stations, and the required stuff. Here we've got our entity component system doing nothing. We've got a couple of systems defined already which update the orbital positions and did the selectables. We talked about that in a previous episode. And then we've got the state machine. Now, there's not that many states at the moment, and I've named them slightly differently. So idle is now doing something useful. It is the state where the player is in complete control, but nothing is selected. The simulation is just running. Then we've got this object is selected, so that's when we've selected anything. And there's some intelligence in that state because it can now determine whether it's a space station or it's a planet. And we'll have a look at how that's done by the ECS system. Then we've got this place orbital marker, that was the big white arrow, and now we've got the space station edit state too. I've then got a few more systems here which I've created to render things. It seems a bit verbose that I'm sort of prefixing things with their intended function, but there's a reason for that. And that's because I've not just got one CPP file using this header, I've actually got quite a few, which is a technique I like to do for larger projects. Then we've got the marker stuff, which we talked about in a previous episode, and then we've got the space station drawing stuff, which is exactly the same kind of thing that we talked about before. I've changed the name of a few of the components, and we'll have a look at that too. Camera mode, we've now got 3 camera modes. The free pan and zoom, the same as before. This was called planet selected or something like that. Now it's selected with just zoom, and now it's selected with pan and zoom. And that was that special mode that allowed us to edit the space stations. And that was quite a complicated mode to implement. Basically, I needed a camera transform within a camera transform to facilitate that. Oh, hi, Phil. Didn't see you there. Will there be a skill tree in the game? I think so, yeah. Certainly a research tree, I think. What about select selectables? Yeah, the select selectables. I believe that was a state, wasn't it, that we had? That's basically our idle. So if you try the demo, have I put the link for the demo? Do I still have that? No, there we go. The demo now displays the current state in the top left whilst it's running. So, one of the first things to look at then is what are these files? So I've got one here called space thing ECS comps. These are the components that are now being used by the entity component system. So the only new thing I've added here is I've taken, remember we had one that was planet, and planet sort of consisted all sorts of disparate and random things. Now they've become mostly components where necessary. So I've got a sphere component if it's a planet or a star, and that actually contains the physical body size of things. The star appearance and planet appearance is basically a link to other entities, which are these tinted textures. So stars only had the 2 textures, and planets had the 3 textures. And there we go, that is the tinted texture thing. Now, space station, in the last episode we did kind of think about putting the whole object of the space station in the component here, but I've gone back to just storing an ID of the space station, and we're going to store the space station separately in a vector. I've decided for now I don't want the space station logic and things to necessarily be part of the ECS. There will be something we'll talk about later on. The systems doesn't have anything in it because that's probably a useless file. I don't need that anymore. The space station file is exactly the same as it was. That's not changed at all. The asset pool has now become a file in its own right, so that's not changed. And I moved my random number generator stuff into a little file as well. Now, all of these files that are ST-engine all include at the top the main, but they're sort of broadly separated so I can navigate things a little bit easier. So if it's a GFX, the suffix is here, this is for drawing things, broadly drawing things. Now that could involve systems, it could involve not systems, just regular pixel game engine drawing routines, whatever, but that's where I'm just keeping the drawing stuff. So the functions I've got here now are the solar system background, which was the cosmic planes. We saw those before. And now I've got this render stars thing. The render the stars is if the body identifies as a star. Now that's for rendering our sun in the middle. We can now quite happily have more than one star, though I don't really know what the effects of that are going to be on things like the lighting later on. Render planets didn't change at all. The only thing I've changed is grabbing this sort of link to the textures that are used to draw these things. Because I think we're starting to need some more planet textures now. Peon501, hello. Yes, I do have a Twitch channel. There we go. Will there be a size limit on the space station? Well, there isn't currently. That was one of the nice things about the way that we develop space stations, is they look like they're a big grid array, but they're not. They're just a collection of the space station modules, so I don't think there necessarily needs to be a limit. There probably is going to be a practical limit, because we're still not really settled on the scale of things in the game yet. I think the limits will become how much power can you get into your space station, and other things that space stations need, and that's the sort of stuff we want to discuss today, maybe. Maybe there should be a PegX for handling random stuff. Well, I believe, and Danderstein's usually the go-to guy on this sort of information, that my random technique using the lemma series, which is I did a video for my procedural random generation, is actually in a way catered for by standard random now, because they have a particular random device which works the same way. So if somebody can actually throw out the name of that device, I can never remember what it's called. A size limit might make sense from a gameplay perspective. Yeah, I think so, Danderstein. Yeah, we'll have something. What ST stands for? Space Thing. Space Thing. Exactly, it's the best name for a game. We're not committing to anything with it. Right, so that's all the drawing routines. The loading routines, this is, well, loaders are just anything that creates stuff. So this is where I'm loading the required assets, so the stuff that the game needs in order to function at its most minimum level. And this is the optional assets, and you'll recognize this code straight away because this is defining the collision structures for the space station modules. Now, we are going to externalize all of this information at some point, so we don't have to sort of define it all in code here. Now, this is where I'm constructing the current scene, and you'll see it becomes a much simpler thing now. Now we're sort of using the ECS properly. So to create, I create 2 tinted textures and I create a star using those 2 tinted textures. I create 3 tinted textures for the planet, and then I create the planet, and that's really it. And it's working very well. I quite like this, and I think today what we'll end up coding in the second half of the show is sort of, I want to kind of generate a bit more of an interesting solar system rather than just the one planet that we've got. So we'll play with generating that information here. Now, I don't currently have any more textures, so we may want to just sort of mess about with the tinting to make them look a bit different for now. Why are you using size T as a type? Well, because it is really. It's basically used as an index into a vector. That's all. It's a unsigned integer. It's fine. The more modules are, the faster it produces heat, but it radiates heat off at a slightly low code. So these are the sort of interesting things. Now, it runs the risk of becoming exceptionally nerdy, and I don't think games. It's a difficult balance, right? You do want it to become deep enough that players become sort of addicted to it and can sort of nerd out about it. They can go onto a forum and sort of swap techniques and strategies. But at the same time, you want it to be sort of constantly rewarding with things. And really nerdy games are not necessarily constantly rewarding to everybody else. So no specific reason. No, it's just unsigned. It's just an integer, isn't it? Nerdy like Elite. Well, yeah, maybe a bit like Elite. Well, that's the thing, right? We could end up creating this very complicated simulation, which nobody really gets anywhere with. And I've got to confess, I'm not sort of into like Dwarf Fortress kind of levels of complexity or anything like that. I wouldn't play that game ever. I don't think you'd have to pay me to play that game. So as well as these other loaders, I've now created this tinted texture thing, and you'll see all these things do is they create an entity and they attach components to that entity. That's all these functions do. They're just convenient functions. Create star, creates the entity, we give it a sphere component, the appearance component, and a position. Create a planet, exactly the same sort of stuff, would make it look like a planet, but it also has a selectable. They also have this orbital component too, so space stations and planets can orbit something. Now, when I create the space stations, that's where I push them into a vector of space stations. So the space station itself is really, in the entity system, is just a number. And that number is an index into this vector of space stations. We may shift that over to the ECS fully later on, but there's reasons why we don't. Fundamentally, that the space station does need to be a collection of modules, and it's tempting to think, oh, well, you make the module a component, and it's not that easy then, because you can really only have one component as part of the ECS. Oh, that's very kind of you, Kaltinril. Kaltinril, yes, that's got to be how it's pronounced. Kaltinril, to Phil there. Yes, good. Good. I'm glad Phil is now subscribing. Why creating a new entity for each tinted? Why not just attach a component to it? Well, that's exactly what you can do, right? So there's literally no overhead here. So if I go to where we created the universe, which was down here, these are 3 different textures with 3 different colors. Now, the entity itself is not the texture. It's just a link to our graphics pool. So it's literally this is a number and a color. So I could reuse those, and if I choose to load this texture again, it doesn't, right? The graphics pool is smart enough, it just says, oh, we've already got that one, so we just want the ID. Will there be orbital speeds in relation to distance? Probably, yes. And I think there kind of is now. Is that right? Maybe it's just not noticeable. Maybe. Hang on, I've got some pings on the old Discord here. Oh, ping from the CodeZone. No, it's not the Mersenne twister. Yeah, that's one of the random devices. Definitely, there's a random device that works the same way as the LM. It's basically a fancy sort of cyclic hash, but I can't recall what the specific naming is in the random library. But you create a new entity where you attach a component and then assign that entity as a variable to another entity. So what's the... I don't fully understand what the what the complaint is. You can't have multiple components that are the same type on an entity. So I don't know how we it's not like I can create that one component and then sort of reuse it. So, this particular planet has 3 textures, as it were. Now, the only way to add those 3 things is because they're slightly more complex than a component. Right? There is more information to it than that, I think. I think there's a... Wouldn't it be better to directly assign a component to the Earth entity? Well... Possibly, but I mean, then that's kind of what we're doing, right? So if we actually go into where we're creating the Earth, create planet, we create this planet appearance component, and that planet appearance component consists of just the 3 textures. A structure which stores information about an entity like its planet of inhabitants, solar system. I've obviously lost the kind of thread of the conversation here. Fizzy Buzzy Beezy, hello. Excuse me. So, where were we up to? Right, the next thing was the file with stations. All that does is contain the code for drawing and checking the overlap. We've done all of that, nothing changed there. Then I have these 2 systems, which are very simple systems as part of the game engine, the update positions and the selectables. Then I have the important one, which is the engine main CPP. Now, this was sort of everything before. Now it's considerably simplified. OnUserCreate initializes our transform views and calls our 2 functions for loading the offsets. Loading the assets. Then we've got our cameras as well. On user update, this is where we house our state machines, and this is where I've been playing around a little bit now. Things have simplified a little bit, but we've now got this sort of rich behavior, which you can try in that little demonstration. So the first state machine, if you recall, was how does the user interface change? Well, when we're in idle, we're just basically selecting something. So we run our system to see are we selecting anything at all. If we are, then we can go to the object is selected state, and that will sort of slide the camera over to the object. In the object is selected state, when we press the S key, we get different behaviors depending on what the object is. Now, the function I've used to determine what an object is does it contain a particular appearance component? So I'm using the any_of function in the ECS there. So it will check to see does this particular entity have any of these components? Well, it's just the one. That will tell me is it a planet or is it a space station? And so I can handle the S key to do different things. Now, when I'm handling space stations, things get a bit complicated because I want the transformed view of the solar system to also interact with a transformed view of the editing sequence of the space station. So there's like a transform view inside a transform view. And I did a little bit of maths manipulation to sort of make that happen. So that's why you can see here this sub-transform view is taking information from the dominant master transform view. A bit kinky here on the old CodeZone. Now, the mouse behaves in the same way when we're in this mode. So if we're selecting something else, instead of pressing the S key, it will also lerp the camera around. We looked at placing the orbital marker, none of that changed, but now when we do actually place the marker, at the moment it creates a space station entity. It might not always need to do that. At the moment there's nothing else for it to place, so we can go straight into creating a space station. And then we have this file space station edit state, which is kind of new, and it's what I was working on yesterday, but it's actually just the code from previous things. You'll see this is all very familiar looking stuff that we've done in previous episodes. The camera modes, I took those out of the functions that were handling the camera modes, and I've put those in now just directly into the state. I thought it was more useful to see all the camera stuff happening all in one place. And this one looks a bit busy because it's handling this sub-transform view alongside the regular transform view. And rendering, well, we talked about rendering in the last episode. You'll see there's different states render in different ways. A lot of them share the same information and render the same stuff. But, for example, the placing orbital marker needs to render one more decal, the white arrow thing. This space station edit mode also does rendering a little bit different, but they can all render these backgrounds as necessary. And the camera is all handled. So now we're in a situation where we can easily add new states, new modalities, and everything should just kind of work. We've fundamentally sorted out these camera problems, except for that bit of jitter. Now we'll get round to that. Orbital. Yes. Any verb ending in erp is great. Right, so let's. What I wanted to do now is right now, if I run the demonstration, we've only got the one planet. Very nicely, it's just sitting there. I think it would be nice to have a few more things, but rather than sort of handcraft it, I was thinking maybe we do sort of become subject to the random number generator and get it to try and spit out a planet and some moons and then other planets and moons too. And really kind of populate the solar system for us. I've also made an executive decision to move away from realistic scaling. So naturally in this solar system, this planet would be huge, right, if it was compared to this sun. The reason being is you do actually kind of want to see things. So I'm the distances, let's assume we're working in sort of a logarithmic space just by looking at it. Now, I don't think I'm going to go to town on realistic distances because it was a bit boring. I'm really quite pleased with the zoom there. How the cameras ended up moving around, I'm pleased with. we can put some satellites. Now, there are some problems if you try this in the demo, because it warns you in the text at the bottom that if you place a satellite sort of this close to the planet, that's fine. It sort of orbits the pole of the planet, but it becomes quite difficult to then select again, because right now the selection mechanism is pretty stupid. It's just checking to see does the cursor exist within a given radius. And something will always win, and it might not be the thing that you want. So just be wary of that in the demo. I'll fix that kind of polish. I just don't think is worth doing on stream, to be honest. But tonight I think we'll start to randomly generate a bit of a solar system, and also start putting out the old begging cup for some interesting textures, maybe. Are you considering adding logging to the engine at some point? Yes, probably. Yeah, when it gets a little bit more sophisticated, what's going on? Because I think we'll need error logging when we start sort of externalizing some of the resources that are being loaded. Gas giants and rocky planets. Yeah, I want all this sort of stuff, Phil. I want a huge asteroid belt as well that's genuinely populated with asteroids. Nanowick, it's okay. Nanowick is trying to design a server logo that is currently representing Pride, which I have no problem with. So, yes, please, if anybody can help him out, he's having a problem with GIMP. Chat through it on the server. You don't have to do all of that in Idiot Box either, Nanowick, right? You can do it somewhere else. Can the satellites or moons drop shadows on the planet? No. I don't think I'm going to go down the route of having sort of actual ray casting stuff going on the planet surfaces. Pizza Maniac. Didn't know you streamed too. I love your stuff. Glad to be here. Snivvysaurus, thank you very much. Yes, 100 bits for Pride there. No ray casting. I've done enough ray casting. I've done too many videos about raycasting. Good evening, LeFob. So, in the loaders, we're creating our universe here. Now, how do we go about sort of creating a solar system? At the moment, I don't have any other textures to load other than these three, so I'm going to reuse them. But we can create different planets. So I think what we probably want to do is firstly choose how many planets are we going to put into our solar system, and that should be random. And so let's start with that. Int n planets. So this is like the core dominant planets is going to be random dot random int. And I think we're probably always going to want maybe 5 planets and go out to about 15. I don't know. The numbers of things we'll have to tweak. And like I did in the procedural generation video, what is a planet is more than just a location and a graphic. We will want to sort of have the planets with resources and things that we can then start to extract in order to build the things that we need. That will all worry about in future episodes. We're really just sort of starting now with thinking about gameplay. Fizzy Buzzy Beezy, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Subscribed at tier 1 for 6 months in advance. Well, that's dedication. Thank you. And Snivvysaurus, subscribe with Prime. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. We've actually gained quite a few followers as well. I don't see the followers as often. I know it goes ping each time somebody follows. But now we're at, if anybody's interested, we're at 4,619. Oh, 4,620. So thank you there, Ryo. You were the 4620th follower. Anyway, we can add blockchain to the game. No. So we're going to have a random number of planets. Let's say we make this sort of stuff up as we go along. So int planet equals 0, and planet is less than n planets, and planet plus plus. We're going to sit in a loop, and we're going to generate these planets. Now, for each of these planets, we're also going to generate some moons and things like that, some satellites. Well, satellites as in celestial bodies rather than mechanical things. Hang on, we had a CodeZone ping. It's Morris. Sorry, forgot to ping you. There we go. Yes, lemma is a type of linear congruential generator. Yeah. It's a fancy shift and XOR. Have we not used a linked list in this? I think we've used linked lists in this. No, maybe we haven't. Oh, we must use a linked list. I like linked lists. Everybody, linked lists. I like them. I think they're all right. Right, so planet's distance from the sun. I guess we also want to do... we need to make sure that the planets don't overlap with each other, so we'll have to play some games with the planet distances there. Excuse me. Well, our planets consist of a radius and a distance from the sun, and they also consist of an angle as well. Well, we can just randomize that one up a bit. So let's pick our random numbers. So double d distance from sun is going to be another random double, but we're going to want to keep track of sort of the minimum number that can be and sort of what the maximum number that can be. So I'm going to bring this out just up here as a dPlanet range variable. And I'm going to set that to, I don't know, 5,000. Again, numbers we're going to have to try and fine-tune a little bit. So we know that the sun, well, I know that the sun happens to be 1,000 in radius. So we don't want to place anything until we get to 1,000. In fact, we probably don't want to place anything until we get to about, 1,500 is probably a good place to start as a minimum. So we will just... We'll store that value. dPlanet min is going to be that. And we're going to increase that as we go along. So our random number, our double, could be then our planet minimum. And our max will be the planet minimum again, plus this magical range. And in effect, our planet minimum becomes the distance from sun. So, if that's the case, let's pull that there and get rid of that and just do that. So that should give us a staggered distance of randomness from the sun. We can test that, of course. Oh, we're going to also pick another one, aren't we? We're going to another metric to pick is the radius. Now, am I not specifying the radius here when I create? What is this? I think 100 is the radius. It is, yes, okay. So pick another random number generator. Random.rnd double. Now we want a minimum size. Small planet's probably going to be 30, and we'll have a large planet, not much larger than what we've already got, I think. So we'll pick 200. Yeah, I want the minimum distance to actually have a genuine minimum. So I'm thinking about that as we go along. So that's going to pick a number from where the current planet already was. Plus that. Yeah, that's not quite what we want, is it? Can you introduce random seeds? Yeah, so that's exactly how this random number generator works. You just seed it with a number. You'll get the same universe each time. I want to not do the distance from the sun this way, do I? Because that's actually not going to work the way I think it is. So the first one will be fine. It'll be some minimum distance plus that range, which could be quite far, to be honest. But then the second one comes along. It's basically, yeah, doubling up the distance each time, which is kind of actually what somebody just commented. Yeah, you're right, Nolton. That's what I was that's originally where I was going with this thought. Is you could end up in a situation where the planets are still colliding, so there needs to be some minimum buffer distance between planets. So I'm going to pick 500 for that. Now, these are numbers we're definitely going to want to tweak, because as we start adding moons and things to the planet, I don't really want the moons to overlap with the moons of other planets. So it could be that these distances do need to be a bit further away. So now we can move this into here. That's orbiting the Sun, that's fine. This becomes our d radius. And this becomes our distance from Sun. And I will just start them all off in a straight line to begin with. And they've all got the same texture. So we can run this and see if that's started to populate our solar system a little bit more interestingly. Watch it pick 6 planets or something miserable like that. So there's our first one, our second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one. Let's see, those two are pretty close. Oh, it created quite a few planets. In fact, it created so many planets, we've gone beyond the edge, we've gone beyond the fringe of the solar system there. So that's probably, in reality, too far apart, those things. But we should be able to select any of them. Yep, so the component system is doing its job. Let's stagger those out a little differently. The planet range I'm going to bring down to about 3,000. And the minimum distance, well, I don't want the radius to be 200 in this instance. I think we'll probably stick with 100. That minimum distance can then therefore come down to about 300 instead. 15 planets, we know it's going to pick 15 planets each time because I don't reset the seed randomly. But we now can also specify this angle. And I'm wondering if the angle actually... Is that angle? I can't remember what it was. D theta it was. So we can just pick anything really for that. Sorry, M random dot rand double. Oh dear. 0, comma... basically we want tau. I can never remember tau, so I just do the maths. There we are. Let's take a look at that then. Well, you see, now they're not all in a straight line. Right, things start to look a little bit more realistic. You have to try and find the planets. So maybe that's something we need to think about, is how does the user actually navigate this world? You know, it shouldn't be the case that you can zoom out so far you can't actually see anything at all of interest. So we probably do need a sensible way of actually highlighting that there is the planet, like a permanent dot that never changes in screen space real estate size. So you've always got this sort of trackable thing you can see. I'm not adding a mini-map. The last thing I want to add to this is a mini-map. As a personal goal on this project, I want to try and keep the sort of the user experience really fluid. And I just think mini-maps are just a lazy game dev technique. Would be cool if the planets gained a circle around them if you're at a large enough zoom depth. You mean to sort of describe the orbital path? Yeah, I think we will probably do something like that at a certain point. So you get to a certain zoom, the orbital mechanics become visible. Because I want to do the same thing for adding a space station. Now I should just be able. I'm going to test the entity component system for real here. So I can select here and click. Yeah, so we've given a satellite to that. But you see, the satellite disappears. So I think we need a permanent marker that says you can see how busy that particular planet or moon or whatever is. But we're not yet at the stage of adding these markers. We do want to add moons, and that's an easy thing to do given what we've got. Yeah, pure improv. I think so. What about hotkeys for locations? Yes, probably. There'll be some definite I want to get to this known state buttons, I think. A line from the star to each planet? Maybe. Yeah, I think perhaps at the map level, yeah. If we zoom out far enough, it works. Stefan the Troll, yeah, I sorted the parallax out. It's a bit more balanced now. Let's just quickly add some moons and then come back to the chat. So for each planet, we want to then sort of basically do all of this again, right? So let's just start with that. Now, I don't have a moon texture to speak of at the moment. And at the moment, we're just throwing the bodies there. We will also need to generate a lot more information for the planets. So I'm just going to change this to moon. And this one is distance from planet. Moon. Moon. Moons. Moon. Interesting this, isn't it? Oh dear. There we go. Distance from planet becomes U, U, U. Moon range this time. Now, our numbers and things will get a lot smaller for moons, of course. I will... yeah, I'll change these just to be safe. Moon. Moon. Because you're going to go linking to Earth. Oh, I can't call you Moon, can I? We'll call you E-Moon, even though we never use you. We don't actually care. Position is fine. Right now we'll use the same textures. You're that one, and you're that one. We just need to tweak the numbers a little bit now. So moons can be quite small. I'm not going to go below 20 because sort of the minimum space station size is 20. Now the space stations, they're sort of in front of the planets, so they could be a lot further away in the planets in the distance. Again, that sort of scale issue we've never really resolved. But I think it's important that moons are not necessarily the same size as planets, at least. So we're going, and we probably also want to make sure that we don't have moons that are actually larger than the planet. Somebody pulled me up on that on the YouTube video where we did the procedural generation. So I'm going to go from 20 as a minimum to the planet's size as a maximum radius. Moon range, distance between the moons is... How many moons do we want? Well, we can have 0, let's say up to 5 moons. And we'll have the moon range this time is going to be much, much smaller. So I think that's got to be maybe 500. We'll see how that works out. Distance from planet from the first one, I guess, has to be at least the radius. Plus some offset. Well, we've got that offset down here, and that offset could be a little bit smaller. Right, I'm going to say we're going to have to fine-tune these numbers, but we'll play with that. Right, have I messed up all of my variables here? Are the chat all shouting at me? Is there a cow in here? Yes, certainly with some moons. Danderstein has given us a bad moon texture in the code zone. Okay, well let's pull that in actually. Let's have a look. Copy, save image as. I'm just saving this into the assets folder for space thing. Space thing, assets. There we go. And so this is Danderstein moon. There we go. Danderstein moon. So I'll need to load that. I'll do that here. Moon lower, we might need that for all three. I don't know how, moons don't have, we've not really got a moon description yet, have we? The planets have the ability to have atmospheres and things. I guess the moons do too. They're just going to be smaller planets. What we call Danderstein moon .png. We'll just tint it with white for the time being. Leave it as is. So what textures to give this? I'm going to create a null texture because I just don't think we need the sky. And to do a null texture, I'm really going to cheat. So I'm just going to do null text. It can load up the moon thing again, that's fine. But what I'll do is I'll just give it a blank as its modulator. Now, will that work? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. That's basically setting the alpha of the texture to null. So it's a bit of a cheap, nasty hack in order to get it to work for now. But it probably does raise an interesting question that we need a method of not having specific textures on planets. Maybe this is a chance to reevaluate whether a tinted texture entity is a good solution or not. Something to think about. Maybe have a discussion on the Discord server afterwards. So now I'm going to create the planet, but I'm going to give it the moon lower, and for this one, excuse me, I'm going to give that one our null texture. Null text. I'm going to keep Earth upper because that's actually our illumination from the sun. Right, let's just see, right? Because I think right now we've changed quite a lot of things. Let's just see what it looks like. Whilst I go back to the chats. Well, yes, you've compiled, so play. There we go. Oh, bump. So we saw that the ECS system sort of took a minute to update there. So we've got a planet here. That's good. Now, if I select the planet, I can see which things are orbiting it. Looks like I need to change the orbital velocity of moons. Here we've got another planet out here. Let's zoom out a bit. So this is a planet with a small moon here. Has it got the moon texture? Actually, let's have a look. What does the texture for the moon look like? Yeah, it kind of works. So we've got a bit that camera jitter. Don't worry, it's because I've been making the transform view thing ready for release. So obviously a bug I need to sort out there. It's not quite rounded like it is, but hey, it's a different texture. That's a good thing. Now let's go and have a look out here. What we got up in this part of the solar system. So we've got a planet and its moons. Excuse me. I would be quite interested in making the moons a bit more visibly rotate, just to sort this out for us. So where have I got? In our create planet, if I go to that definition, if I base the orbital velocity, which is now just set to 1 for everything, if I base that on some function of the distance, which am I not doing in my systems? No, I took that out. I did have, at one point, the orbital velocity directly linked to the distance. There was a coefficient in there. I've taken that out now. You are new and you're curious, how did the body lighting? The body lighting is a complete hack, although it works very nicely. Fundamentally, let me pull up a file window and go to my assets folder. Fundamentally, I have a planet atmosphere shadow texture, which looks like that. And I can rotate that texture when I draw it. So it's also got the sort of halo effect and things. I drew this in an art package, and I can rotate that to always face the center of the universe, because the center of the universe is where our sun is, and that makes the calculation very easy. The actual rotation value is just the arctangent of y over x, so the arctangent of the position of this in Cartesian space around the star. So nice, simple stuff. Right, I wanted to make these moons run around a bit quicker, but this is where I kind of need an Ericsson. I need an Ericsson to sort the maths out. These are all raster graphics, in a way. No, we're not using normal maps just yet. We will be getting there. Does the PG even support vector graphics? Somebody did do an SVG extension, but I don't think they ever posted a link to it. But there are some fairly interesting extensions coming up, hopefully in the next few weeks. One of which is pixel shaders, which will allow us to do interesting things with how we render stuff. But hey, let's get there first. I'm going to change. I want to have some sort of coefficient in here based upon the distance. But I need to be careful about what I pick because if I just pick the distance, then we're going to end up with all sorts of weird stuff going on here. So I'm going to pick the distance, and then I'm going to multiply it by some horrible bodge factor like that. So that's going to affect everything, right? Planets, satellites, everything is now sort of fundamentally also going to change their speed based on how far they are. But that's what I was a bit concerned about, is they're effectively going to stop because I'm not going fast enough in that instance. So let's get it to go quickly at the moment. Right, so yes, see, everything's going now very, very quickly. But kind of in the wrong way. I guess we want it to be inversely proportional, right? So that the stuff closer to the sun is the faster rotating things. In that instance, if I then make this some sort of inverse proportional, this is what I like doing in game dev. I like just messing around like this and seeing what things look like and learning about how they move about. I'm just going to dial that back a tad. Because this is going to become a very small number, so we may find that we actually want to now increase this considerably. Because our distances are in the thousands. Yeah, okay, I was right. So we want to actually increase that number a fair bit. Maybe a little bit more. Yeah, okay. Let's just add another 0 in there. I think that's how we had it, Denison. We had 1 over the square root of the distance at some point. There we go. That's nice. So now if I select the planet becomes the sort of locked-on feature. We can definitely see that its moons are rotating at different speeds, which is quite nice. Let's have a look at this one. There's 3 moons, very nice. We can select one of the moons and go for a trip around the universe. Let's have a look up here, what's going on. So these ones are really far out. It's far out, man. And I'm guessing that's the planet? Yep. And it's 2 moons. Yeah, so maybe at a zoom like this is where we do actually want to have some sort of orbital navigation lines. But now we've got these little clusters of things behaving like, well, solar system bodies. Can you select moons right now? Yes. And I can build satellites around them because... That's probably... we do need to adjust the maths for the speed of rotation of things. Makes me a bit dizzy, that. The lighting of the moons is not correct. Right, well, let's have a look. So let's have a look at our closest. Yeah, so everything is lit by the sun. There we are. So if I select this moon, the sun is there right now. Yeah, the lighting should be correct. So everything is lit, assuming that the light source is at 0, 0, the origin of the space here. We did, Christoph. We started off with the actual orbit equations. Now, one of the things I've noticed just by looking at this moon texture is what is the aesthetic we're going for with the game? Do we want the planets to look a bit cartoony? Do we want them to be realistic? I don't know. But what I do know is I can't sort of easily distinguish between the planets at zoomed out. It's as if the atmosphere that we're drawing sort of kind of makes everything a bit washed out and bland. So that's going to need a bit of thinking about. But I'm quite pleased that we've got sort of an orbiting system. We've got our little planets ticking about. That's good. I think before the next stream I might add in those markers, because if we zoom out really far, I can't see where anything is. So it might be interesting to sort of add the paths that they're going to take at a certain zoom, because I don't want the path sort of on the screen at this level. But now I want to place a satellite. This is going to see satellites around the planet are sort of going to be placed here and here. That moon's obviously far too close to this planet, so we do need to tweak the numbers. But because of the equations we've just put in, yeah, that's a nice sort of spirograph thing going on. But if I press S, that should stabilize. we can edit the space station as necessary. Right, that's good. I'll press escape and that should become that planet. Now I want to select, there we go. So we can see that the space station is far too fast relative to the orbit. Now we have sped things up deliberately anyway because we want to be able to see stuff moving. In the game it's never going to be at this speed. Larger planets should have exoplanet moons. So these exactly all these sort of things we can now start to formalize, right? So we can put in equations which will determine how the universe should be generated in a realistic way. Now, people have already done this sort of thing for the procedural generated video. I know that there's a few videos on YouTube already of people who have gone to real lengths of sort of describing the universe, even down to facial features of inhabitants of that universe, all done with sort of the same technique. I don't know how deep we're going to go into this, but we might have a look at some of that code. Anyway, I've massively overran. So thank you very much, everybody that's here. 173 viewers might actually be a new record for me, certainly. Certainly on Twitch, anyway. On YouTube, not quite. I think YouTube, the record is about 700 viewers, I think, all at once, and that was just too scary. So we'll leave it at that. I won't upload this demo just yet. Let me tweak some of the speeds and things before I put this on the browser base. If somebody could link to the demo, or if not, just come over to the Discord server, because we have a special chat for CodeZone devs and people that want to get involved. Yes, thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully we'll be here on Friday with a Friday stream, but we're entering that period of my life where I can't really commit to any times. Those of you that follow along with the YouTube channel will know precisely what I'm talking about. So until then, given that nobody ever gets in touch with me beforehand, despite already knowing they should be giving me people to raid at the end of the stream, but it's a bit too late for that now. So next time, give me a heads up in advance if you want me to raid somebody. So until then, take care of yourselves. I'll see you on Friday. Bye bye.